Good morning. Okay, so we're gonna really just continue on what we had learned before last week about fractions, decimals, and percents. So this first part is just gonna be a review. How do we turn these into fractions? So let's focus on 0 and 6/10. So 0 and 6/10 would be written as 6/10, but then remember that your fractions always have to be reduced to lowest terms. So to reduce a fraction, we always want to make a division ladder. We're going to divide by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So your final answer for this would be 3/5. Okay, then we've got 0 and 685 thousandths. So if I read that as 0 and 685 thousandths, we're going to put 685 over 1,000. That can clearly be reduced. So I'm going to scooch that up there, give myself a little bit more space. Okay, so 685 divided by 1,000. So what I'm looking at right now is that this number ends with a 5 and this number ends with a 0. So we learned in that very first week of school with our divisibility rules that numbers that are divisible by 5, numbers that end with 5 or 0 are divisible by 5. So 685 divided by 5 is 137, and 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. Then remember your fraction bar goes right here. So that answer would be 137 200ths. How do we turn these into decimals? So now we're going the opposite direction, fraction to a decimal. So first we're going to read the fraction. So that fraction is read as 7/10. 7/10 is written as 0 and 7/10. This one is read 2/5. Now the easiest way to convert a fraction to a decimal is first of all look at your denominator. If you can multiply your denominator to get to the number 10 or the number 100, it's super simple. Well, I know I can do 5 times 2 and make that denominator a 10. So then I would have to do the same thing to the numerator, and that's going to be 4/10. Now, once you get to the fraction 4/10, we're just going to write 0 and 4/10. Oops, I'm sorry, missed this one over here. 2/25. So again, look at your denominator. Can we multiply 25 times something to get 100? Yes. 4 quarters to make $1, so 25 times 4 is 100, and 2 times 4 is 8. Now once we have the fraction 800ths, we can write the decimal 800ths, 0.08. How do we turn these into decimals? So remember, the first thing you want to do is check your denominator. Is there anything that you can multiply 3 times to get 10 or 100? No. If there isn't, you are going to have to divide the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to do 1 divided by 3. You're going to have to add your decimals and your 3 zeros. 3 cannot go into 1. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract and get 1. Drop the 0. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so we're turning these into a decimal. So that decimal is going to be 0.3 repeating. You do not need to write more than 1 3. If 3 is the only digit that repeats, you only have to put 1 3, but then you're going to put that repeating line on top of it. 11/15. Check your denominator. Is there anything you can multiply 15 times to get to 100? No. So this one's going to be numerator divided by denominator. You're going to add your decimals and your 3 zeros. So 15 cannot go into 1. 15 cannot go into 11. 15 times 7 is 105. 110 minus 105 is 5. Drop down your 0. 15 times 3 is 45. 50 minus 45 is 5. Drop your next 0. 15 times 3 is 45. 50 minus 45 is 5. Okay, so this is going to be repeating. So that's going to be 0.73. Now, since 3 is the only digit that repeats, that repeating bar is only going to go over the 3. So now we have a mixed number. What I like to do before I start any math is I like to put my answer box, because I know that if there's a 5 sitting in front of my fraction, I'm going to have a 5 sitting in front of my decimal. So I don't want to forget that when I write my answer. Now, 8 is not a factor of 10 or 100. So we're going to have to do 1 divided by 8. Add your decimals and your 3 zeros. So 8 cannot go into 1. 8 goes into 10 once. 10 minus 8 is 2. 8 times 2 is 16. And 8 times 5 is 40. So this is called a terminating decimal. It's terminating because at the very bottom of my work, I got a 0 remainder. So this answer is going to be 5 and 125 thousandths. Last one on this page. So this is clearly an improper fraction. That is okay. We're still going to do numerator divided by denominator. So 17 divided by 8. Add your decimal and 3 zeros. So 8 cannot go into 1. 8 goes into 17 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract and get 1. Drop that 0. 8 times 1 is 8. Drop the next 0. 8 times 2 is 16. Drop the last 0. And 8 times 5 is 40. So we have another terminating decimal because we got a 0 remainder. So this answer is going to be 2 and 125 thousandths. Okay, so let's go to page 2. So now for percents. Turn these into percents. So the first one is red, 0 and 35 hundredths. All you have to do is move that decimal twice to the right. 0 and 35 hundredths is equal to 35%. Move the decimal 2 places to the right, which means we're going to have to insert a 0. So 2/10 is equal to 20%. Another way that you can think about that, 2/10 is equal to 2/10, but we know a percent is out of 100. So if I multiply 10 times 10 and 2 times 10, I get 20 hundredths. 20 hundredths is 20%. Read the decimal first. 0 and 2 hundredths. Well, 0 and 2 hundredths. 2 hundredths is 2 hundredths, which equals 2%. Or you could have moved that decimal 2 places to the right to get 2%. A couple different ways you can solve these. Turn these into percents. Remember what we learned last week was that the easiest way to do it is, first of all, check that denominator. Is 25 times anything 100? Yes. 25 times 4 and 12 times 4. 4 quarters to make $1. So 25 times 4 is 100. And 12 times 4 is 48. We're turning these into percents. So 48 hundredths is equal to 48%. Check the denominator first. Is 20 a factor of 100? Yes. 20 times 5. Remember, 2 times 5 is 10. So if 2 times 5 is 10, 25 times, add an extra 0 is 100. 19 times 5 is 95. And 95 hundredths is equal to 95%. 3/8. Check the denominator. Is 8 a factor of 100? No. If it's not, you're going to have to do numerator divided by denominator. Add your decimals and your 3 zeros. Drop that next 0. Drop the last 0. So this is terminating because when we finished, our remainder was a 0. So if I'm going to convert this to a percent, I'm going to find a different color font. If I'm going to convert this to a percent, I have to move that decimal 2 places to the right. So my percent is going to be 37.5%. Check the denominator first. Is 15 a factor of 100? No. If it's not, you're going to do numerator divided by denominator. Add your decimal and your 3 zeros. $15 times 6 is 90. 100 minus 90 is 10. Drop that next 0. 15 times 6 is 90. 100 minus 90 is 10. So we see this is going to be repeating decimal. Now remember, we're converting this to a percent. So you have to move this decimal from in front of the 8 to behind the 6. So this is going to be 86 and 6/10 repeating percent. Is 9 a factor of 10 or 100? No. So we're going to do numerator divided by denominator. Add your decimal and 3 zeros. We're going to convert this to a percent. So remember, we have to, let me find my blue. We're going to move that decimal 2 places to the right. So that percent is going to be 44 and 4/10 repeating percent. Three is what percent of 8? 3 is what percent of 8? So we're going to do 3 divided by 8. Add your decimals and 3 zeros. Zero remainder. If we're going to convert to a percent, we have to slide that decimal 2 places to the right. So that's going to be 47 and 5/10%. So what would these be as fractions? 0 and 2/10%. So first of all, if we're converting from a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right. So we're going to do the opposite. To go from the percent to the decimal, we're going to go 2 places to the left. So watch what I'm going to do with this decimal. I'm going to go once around the 0 and then move it one more time to the left, which means I'm going to have to put a 0 placeholder here. So this is equal to 0.002. And the question was, what would these be as fractions? Well, now let's think about how we read this decimal. This is read as 2 thousandths. So that equals 2 thousandths. Now we have to reduce that. So I'm going to do 2 and 1,000 in a division ladder. Divide by 2. So that equals 1/500th. Converting a percent to a decimal. First step, move that decimal 2 places to the left. So now we have 0.875. So this is read 875 thousandths. 875 thousandths. Make a division ladder. Numbers ending in 5s and 0s are divisible by 5. So 875 divided by 5 is 175. And 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. So our final answer, oh, I'm sorry. Nope, divide by 5 again, my bad. Divide by 5 again. So 175 divided by 5 is 35. And 200 divided by 5 is 40. One more time, divide by 5, 7/8. That was a lot of work. 7/8 is our final answer on that one. Last one. Okay, so 225%. For this one, we're going to slide that decimal 2 places to the left. So that would be So that would be equal to 225 hundredths. So remember, percent always goes over 100. So really all you have to do is take this number and put it over 100. 225 hundredths. So now we're going to do 225 numerator divided by denominator. 0, 0. 100 times 2 is 200. Subtract. So we've got 2 and 25 hundredths, which reduces to 2 and 1/4. And that would be your final answer as a fraction. Alrighty, folks.